Welcome to Inclusive Cyber, your front row seat to understand how a diverse mix of voices is not just necessary, but essential to protect our most sensitive computer networks and personal data. I'm your host, Danny Magallanes, and through my podcast, we shine the spotlight on the heroes and trailblazers from every corner of society who are redefining the diversity, equity, and inclusion frontier. Every episode is a step towards a cyber community that's as varied as it is united, where everyone has the keys to unlock their potential and the power to protect our digital world. Join us on this journey where every listen, every share, every dialogue inches us closer to this new reality. In this episode, I'm joined by Quintana Patterson, who I met via the Denver chapter of WESIS. And let me tell you, I'm glad I did. I loved her authenticity and genuine concern that things must change, not only in our profession, but within society. We talk about why representation matters, deep empathetic conversations matter, and why you can't measure your DEI programs by checking boxes. Again, we're here to let our voices be heard, and everyone has unique insights that have the potential to resonate with our listeners. We definitely don't hold back on this episode. Please subscribe, like, and share via your favorite social media platforms. Hope you enjoy the episode. Quintana, how are you doing? Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Danny. I'm excited to be here. This is my first podcast or webinar or whatever we call these things, so I'm excited.
It's going to be a video podcast. Just looking forward to this conversation. You can just provide a quick background of where you're at and how you got there.
I'm at the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus. I am their IT Clinical and Compliance Manager, which is a fancy way of saying that I'm responsible for compliance and risk assessment specifically for the School of Medicine. And I also oversee the IT and sometimes compliance needs for 50 clinics we acquired from one of our affiliates. So it's just basic tapping into playing the middle person and helping them with tickets and being the navigational calm piece between the owner of the equipment and the doctor personnel in the clinic. So that's what I do now. I got here, so I went to Metro on a scholarship, didn't know what I wanted to do. Well, I did, but God had other plans. I wanted to go in the Air Force and deal in computers and forensics, that kind of thing, but got a scholarship, found out about the night on my graduation. So I went to Metro, started work study there. I got into network administration. I did everything from computer operations to database administration. And then finally moved over to the server team, like managing and supporting the labs on campus. And my manager at the time was a Black woman. And I'd never seen women of any color, of any statute in any of those positions. So I don't even know if she realized she was my role model or my mentor, but she was at the time. And I know it's because of her. That's why I'm where I'm at now. I take a lot of pride into making sure that anybody that I come in contact that wants to get into this industry, I do my best to uplift them, because being a woman, and especially a minority woman in this industry, it's hard. And sometimes if you don't know the right channels to get in, you feel like hopeless. So I make a point to bring those behind me up with me.
A lot of great things you mentioned, so I definitely want to go into them. But first, thank you for that background. Very experienced. A couple of questions in regards to how you initially got started, because talking to a lot of students here locally and just in my network, they're always reaching out, hey, we want to get into cyber. How did you initially start that? Was it peers? Was it just something that you're passionate about? Where did that come from?
I like doing things out of the ordinary. So I really think it started in typing class in the 8th grade. My typing skills were better than most of my fellow students. So I was like, oh, I can do this. And then I think one of the schools I went to, because I went to several, not because I was a bad student, but because we moved around a lot. I think it was like a computer analytics or computer word processing. And in that class, I started to try to figure out, what is this? How does it work? And I think that's what really started me off. And I've always liked to take things apart. My dad used to really get pissed at me because I would take apart. He had the big wheels with music, and I would take it apart and see. He was like, "Why are you taking my stuff apart?" I take the little discs apart, and so I
Right.
think I've always been interested in hardware and technology, and I think it just was a seed that was planted then.
I love that, and especially the curiosity. I think nowadays we kind of miss that.
Mm-hmm.
People are not curious on how things work.
Nope.
It's whether they don't really appreciate it or maybe they just don't take the time.
I think it's
Yeah.
both.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a fast-paced society and everybody wants everything now, so they don't really take the time to really understand what goes into anything for that matter. So I think it's a little bit of both.
I remember I'm just thinking back what I would call snack culture. And I didn't coin that term, but it was a Wired magazine back in the early 2000s. I want to say maybe pre iPhone and obviously pre social media,
Hmm.
that our attention is being limited by this new technology with the internet. So just an amazing time. Curious on the computer that you learned on, because I know I have my computer that we had in school. So just curious if it was the same.
Oh man, it was one. Of course, it had a floppy disk, like the 3.5, the big floppies,
Yeah.
and nobody appreciated what it was for. But I didn't. I wanted to know more about it, so I would stay after and talk to my teachers. And I think it God, was it an NT machine. I can't even remember
Hmm.
back that far. Whatever the solution or the application was before Word got big, it was. Can you remember?
Oh, man.
Yeah, yeah. And when Microsoft Word came out, I was like, nobody's going to use this because I was using whatever solution was back then, and then all of a sudden that one disappeared. I remember back. I'm like product of mainframes in the Novell days, so
Oh, wow.
that's yeah,
Okay.
that was real.
Yeah, definitely. The name is going to kill me. I know it's in the back of my mind, but the computer that I was thinking, at least when I got exposed at school, was the Apple II.
Ah,
This
yeah.
monochrome screen, and then eventually my brother convinced my mom to buy a computer. This is pre Windows. It was MS DOS, and it
Yes.
had a proprietary software. It was actually a Tandy 1000 back
Oh
in the
wow.
day. No hard drive and no internet. It was in the late 80s, even though
Yeah.
I think at that time you were able to connect, but obviously completely different from what we see now. No, that's great. Kind of transitioning and pulling the thread a little bit. You mentioned that your mentor was a Black woman, and that seeing ourselves in a profession or something, if we don't have people that look like us, it makes it a little bit harder. Did you ever ask her how she got into that space? Because very few women, and then also women of color, are unfortunately in our space right now in 2023. I can't even imagine 5, 10, 15 or more years ago. I'm kind of curious, did you ever talk to them about that?
I did. She was a very no hard holds bar person. Like she told it like it was, and she was like, I didn't let anybody tell me no. She said she started out doing networking, technical on hand stuff, and just worked her way up through the ranks. And I didn't ask her specifically how she got the role at Metro, but she had done her time, and she said she'd had many doors slammed in her face. She'd had people do what we call now gaslighting and telling her she's not capable, not only because she was Black, because she was a woman. She said she even had somebody tell her that she didn't have the mental capacity to be in computers because she was Black. And this is 93, 94 when I was doing this
Yeah.
work study. And just to hear that during that time, and mind you, she was about 20 years older than me at the time, but to know that there's this person in this position that had gone through, in my mind, I looked at it as the civil rights movement. She paved the way for me to be in this space. And I think from then on, I wanted to just do her justice and make sure that I stayed in it and made sure that I excelled in it and proved anybody wrong that told me I couldn't be here.
I definitely love that story. And also, you paying it forward. So when students or anybody reach out to you, trying to kind of paying it forward to increase more women in our industry. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I guess just curious, any roadblocks, any issues that you experience getting into the industry? Because unfortunately, I'm hearing a lot talking to other guests in this podcast, and even the younger generation, that there's gatekeepers not allowing them in. Do you have any stories to share?
I think for the most part, I've been pretty fortunate. Those, either my management or other people around me that kind of embrace me and help uplift me in some of the spaces, you will encounter those who question your ability, your competency anywhere you go. But specifically because I'm a woman, not until one particular employer that I will remain nameless. But there was a lot of, in that role, even though I got hired to do a specific duty, I'm not sure if it was because my management at the time knew I knew more than him, or was threatened by the fact that I knew more than him. But he had me questioning, most of the time that I was there, my ability to do my job. Whether it be that I wasn't technical enough, or questioning or second guessing things that I wanted to do or processes that I wanted to put in place. He was not very supportive in that. The one thing that I will recall from that is I wanted to take some training courses, and he recommended me taking SANS 540, which is exploits. And I knew that's not what I wanted to do, but I was like, okay, maybe I do need to work on my technical skills. And so, being as though they were paying for it, I was like, okay, let me do it. I will tell you, day 3 of the SANS course, and anybody who's taken SANS know that these are no joke. They are it's like drinking from 16 water hoses, like seriously. And day 3, I remember I had a mini nervous breakdown. And I knew I was having one because I was pacing. They have this wonderful spread of snacks, midday snacks. And I was pacing around it, crying and eating. And like, why am I doing this? I can't do this. It was Metasploits and backpipes that were just, I was like, oh my God, I don't know why am I here? And I started to question everything I'd ever done up until that point. And I had checked out. I had 3 more days of training plus a lab on Saturday that I was just like, I'm here. They paid for it. I'm just going to be here, but I'm not really going to be fully invested. And I wasn't. And then I even proceeded to take the exam. Didn't pass it, but because I went in with the wrong mentality. I already went in defeated. And after that, I swore I would never let anybody do that to me again. And it was just that feeling of being defeated and letting somebody, my own management, who hired me to do a job, trusted me to do that role. And I don't know at what point it changed, but then tried to make me feel like I was incompetent. And I let that affect me. And that was probably one of the biggest regrets since I've been in this industry, is letting somebody else tell me what I can't do and actually believing it. And then having to pick myself up out of that. Other than that experience, everything has been, like I said, I think I've been pretty fortunate in having people that support me. And I have these organizations that I'm with now that I get support and encouragement from them. And I lean on them in any of those instances where I'm questioning my ability.
It's fascinating why leaders take this, it's either us or them mentality. That called leaders put their people down because they want to feel that power, that seniority, or whatever, because they think it's some type of scarcity model that if they're smarter or better than me, then they're going to take my job. And people are thinking that way. That's just unfortunate. Sorry that had to go through that. But I want to also kind of pivot in regards to the technical. So, quick story in my background. When I first got into cyber, everybody was pinging me and saying, hey, that's great. I want to get into cybersecurity as well. And I was in government at the time. And the 2 things that came out of my mouth were, that certifications do you have? You have a degree in cybersecurity. Yeah, you need that. But the most ironic thing was I didn't have that. So I was a gatekeeper. And the unfortunate thing was women and people of color were asking me this. So I got caught up in this system or this culture that in order to gain entry, you need to have these technical skills. So wanted to your perspective on, have you experienced that culture, and any insight on how to negate that or change the paradigm within our industry?
It's funny. So I was with the state for 9.5 years, and I was going to be a manager, an IDM manager, essentially, over a team of 7. The role required a master's degree, which I had. But when I got in there, when I got hired, my manager, her manager, and the CTO, which is the chief technical officer, didn't have that. Most of them only had high school diplomas. So I was like, for me coming into this role to do this, I have a database administrator manager who doesn't have a college degree, but I was required to have a master's. Like, in that, not to say that was me specifically, but that was what they gave to the role. And it's funny now when I go to talks or panels or whatever, and people are like, oh, certifications are really important. And I'm like, yeah, they are. But guess what? As of Wednesday, I have my first technical certification, my very first. And I know a lot of people, especially the ones coming in that hear that, oh, I have the experience, but I can't, I have the certs, but I don't have the experience. How do I get the experience without getting the job? And I'm part of a mentor group, and I have a lady in there who has 6 certifications right now, and she is settling for being a technical writer. And I'm like, that is not okay. I'm advocating to try and find her a position where she can utilize the skills. And it's not like she just has the skills on paper. She doesn't just take the exam. Like, she has work-related experience, but she's not able to translate that because nobody will give her the opportunity. And I don't know when that's going to change. I think employers, I've always been the type of manager or leader that, okay, if you're missing some of the minimal qualifications, but you can somehow articulate to me and convince me that you're the job, I will give you a chance. Because I don't know if I would have been given that opportunity without having a master's degree. It's a master's degree, and it's not even in cybersecurity, it's in computer information, but it's still technically related. But being a mentor, I hear these horror stories about these women who, how do I get experience? How do I get the opportunity to get in there? Nobody's going to give me a chance. Let's navigate this together, because trying to do this on your own is very difficult, and it's frustrating because I don't have the answers. I don't know why employers are not willing. It's entry level. Why are you requiring 5 years experience and a master's degree or a degree in cybersecurity for an entry level job? It's entry level. So I think somehow we have to shift that paradigm with the employers of what entry level is and how to really articulate that to the folks applying for these roles.
Hate that to the leaders that are, hopefully they're not doing it intentionally, or that makes it even worse. But being cognizant that this is how we're being portrayed to people that want to join our profession, or the transitioning professionals, doctors, lawyers wanting to get into our space. I met somebody at a conference in Chicago, I recall what they were doing before, but they were willing to get an entry-level position. I'm like, no, you have so many life skills that you've learned here doing 15, 20 years. You should not be coming in as an entry-level position. I am super passionate and frustrated with the industry that we need to do better. Because hearing your stories, you probably have dozens. I have dozens as well. And it's just a snowball effect. We're telling these transitioning professionals or young professionals trying to get in, you need these to gain entry, but they have it and they're still not allowed it. Yeah. So the system is definitely broken, that we need to get better. One of my good friends, they applied to a position. And the application, which is typically what, background information, experience, they actually had to fill out this questionnaire about the position. They were looking at somebody in the industry, this unicorn that we always tend to look for when we're hiring somebody to fill in the open vacancies that we have. But we're hiring within and we're not allowing new people to come in, then we're going to be lacking innovation, creativity, and we're going to keep on repeating the same process or the same issues over and over, because we're just hiring and just changing companies left and right, and we're not allowing this innovation, creativity through diverse voices and their backgrounds. Like you mentioned, I'm willing to train people. But maybe that's it. People are so busy putting fires out that they don't have time to train.
Well, and I mean, I get that, but you're hiring for a position like you if you want somebody to come in boots ground, then don't post an entry level position because that's not what it's for. Because you should know that with entry level, there's going to be some training involved. Heck, with mid level, there's going to be training involved because they have to understand the environment. So it's not just entry
Good point.
level where they have to take that time and kind of fill that gap temporarily. Now, if the person's still there a year and they still haven't gone on, that's a whole different conversation. But there are gaps
Right.
that unless you're hiring at the executive level where you better come in and you know exactly what the heck you're doing, you just need to understand our infrastructure and our environment. The rest of this you better know how to do. Mid and entry level, that can't be an expectation because there's a learning curve somewhere that has to be. One trick that I've started to tell people is get in on the service desk. Start in the help desk. Do that for 6 months and get a feel for where their needs are. If they don't have a security person, start doing, hey, have you thought about this? Have you looked at this? Or what about these regulations? Or how does application security look on these servers? There are ways to get in there to get the foot in the door. You don't have to stay there, but if it's the kind of organization that allows for lateral movement, that's one way to get into the industry. And I think that's one thing that I really love about cyber. There's so many entry points and so many curves and valleys that you can go through. If you don't like something, pivot to something else. If that doesn't work, go back to what you were doing until you figure out what you want to do. When I was the
Right.
manager at the state, I actually took a demotion to get into the security piece.
Hmm.
It was hard, but I was like, all right, I want to do something different, so this is what I do. And I started in the SOC and thought, oh my God, this is so cool. And then I was like, yeah, no, I don't want to look at logs all day long. No, that's not what I want to do with my life. I'm not doing that. So then I pivoted from that and started configuring firewalls and routers and switches and pivoted from that. And then that's how I got the wonderful job at at the employer with the gaslighting manager.
It's an incredible career journey that you're going through, and will continue. One thing that you mentioned about school and about education, right? Nowadays, is school relevant? For me, it was like you complete high school, get your diploma, then you go to college, 4 years, maybe more if you want to do the doctor route or the lawyer route.
Right.
But I think nowadays it's a little bit different because I'm having a paradigm shift with my kids. Well, do they really need to go to college? Right. And I would still argue for minorities in this country, yes. But the costs are super, they're just out of control compared to when it went. What's your perspective on that?
I agree with you. As minorities, we have to have that, even just a college degree. And I understand that there are some individuals where college just is not their forte. It's not something they want to do. But I can't say that I've
Right.
seen any cyber position where just certifications are sufficient. And as minorities, we still have to be that, we have to be 25 feet ahead of them. We have to work 50 times harder. We have to be
Right.
80% better and more strategically smart. So I think having that degree, especially in this technical industry, would be beneficial for us. Um, I can't speak for the non minorities because they will always have an advantage. And I don't mean any disrespect when I say that, but it's a natural
Yeah.
fact that yes, women struggle, but and have their challenges, but white women, I think, have a certain, again, no disrespect, entitlement that they're not even aware that they have.
Mhm.
And for them to say, oh, I did this, and yes, I was the only woman in the room, and luckily I had people surrounding me. That's great, but as minorities, we don't always have that. Like I said, I've been very fortunate to
Right.
have even just my coworkers and peers supporting me and uplifting me, encouraging me. But coming into this industry, we have to have an advantage right out the gate. And I think those degrees help with that. And there might be people who disagree with me, but that's where I feel that we still have to hold on to that knowledge. And I think it sets a decent
Mhm.
baseline framework for everything else that we build on. Because yeah, you can take a certification and do intro to whatever, but without that full understanding of what the technical jargon is and what a network is and what the OSI model. I mean, just these are basic things that people forget that you really need to have a somewhat understanding of. Can you get those from search? Yeah. But I would always highly recommend going the educational route because that baseline has helped me through most of my career. Because once it's in there, it's in there. You may not use it, but when you're presented with it, you'll be like, oh, yeah, I remember that. And then you don't have to do so much
Right.
digging and research and homework to get a good understanding of it.
No, I love that. And I definitely agree with you with the education route. If we start looking at DEI in cybersecurity, right? We look at the numbers. I think it's ICS squared or ICS2. The numbers are just abysmal.
Mhm.
And there was a conference this year, the FSISAC conference, and I met this analyst from UK, and she mentioned the fact that it's not only about bringing in the diverse perspectives, but it's retention. What have you experienced in regards to retention?
From experience, I think the one thing that's lacking is conversations with the diverse or the minority individuals in that environment. Where I'm at now, they do an awesome job of DEI. Like this place, CU, Anschutz Medical, I'm calling them out. They walk the walk, they talk the talk, they are very adamant and prove that they are wanting to retain the minorities on campus. Having an understanding of where the gap is, having an understanding of why people choose to leave, whether it be through exit interviews, whether it be through performance reviews, but it's also giving individuals the safe space to say if there's issues. And if people don't feel like they can safely talk about the issues or bring it up without retaliation, nothing will be said and nothing can be fixed. So I think conversations is what needs to have, whether it be management, whether it be HR, but you have to give us the sense that what we're saying matters and that you really believe in the importance of having our voice being heard and retaining us in your organization. Without those conversations, nothing can be fixed. It starts with conversation. You can throw money at DEI all you want to, but if you don't have a way to actually measure that, what good is it? Yeah.
I'm going to push back just a little bit. I agree with you that we need to have that conversation, but probably a lot of companies would say that, yeah, we are having that conversation, but we're still not connecting. What exactly are you all doing? Because the thing that I want to get from your experience and any other guests that I have here is to create best practices that we can bring into our respective companies and not say that it's going to be a clear cut and paste that it's going to work because it worked at this particular employer or industry, but at least giving us a list of use cases that it was successful. So when you say having those conversations, what does that mean?
I chuckle because I'm thinking about my previous employer, and there was an issue with the HR director where we were in an RFP meeting, and for whatever it was benefits, and he signaled me we're asking questions about what kind of benefits they offer, and this is what he did to me. He was like, if Quintana wanted to buy some marijuana, would she be able to go in here and get a discount, essentially? And I'm like, I said in the meeting, I was like, if you had said alcohol, I might let you get away with that. But, and everybody chuckled and nobody said anything. So later I had to schedule a meeting with him. Mind you, this is the HR director. And I walked in his office and he was like, I know why you're here. I was like, do you really know why I'm here? And he's, yeah, that was really inappropriate. And I didn't mean for it to come across or something like that. But not once did I get an apology. That was really embarrassing. Like, why are you assuming? Because I am not only the only Black woman in the room, the only Black person in the district, and you assume that I smoke marijuana. So it's just being able to have those kinds of conversations of what to do, what not to say, how to approach. And the problem is they already, from a Black woman perspective, I've been labeled as angry without any merit. Oh, don't make Quintana mad. She might go off. I'm like, how do you know? Why don't you have a conversation with me to really understand how I am as an individual? So I think those conversations that need to be had have to come across to where those that really believe in the initiative know it's not just, oh, we're just checking a box. This is something that we're really passionate about. And whether that be through awareness training, whether it be meet and greets, I don't know. Like, staff need to understand that I am the same as you. I have feelings just like you. I want to be treated just like you. This is not the 1960s. You don't have to isolate me and make me feel like an outsider, and I shouldn't have to be afraid to be who I am to
Right.
be in your presence. Danny, I don't know, because to me, DEI is, that's what I see it as. I see it as a checkbox. And every time I see, oh, we're doing a DEI initiative, I'm like, what does that mean? What are you doing?
Mhm.
What is your
Right.
intent? What are you hoping to get out of this initiative that you're bringing forward? And when you bring it forward later, people feel like it's being pushed down their throat. Oh, this is something else that we have to worry about. Oh, why do we have to worry about, we treat everybody equal? It's like, do you? Are you sure you do? I don't have an answer for this. I really do not, because it's,
I
go ahead.
appreciate that insight. I think you said it, right? Having those deeper, empathetic conversations at the end of the day and putting your entire heart and soul into it, as opposed to, like you mentioned, checking that box. It's got to be intentional. Now, I would add on top of that, we got to hold leaders accountable.
Mm-hmm.
The way kind of business works, money talks. If you're not intentional and it's not about those numbers or checking the box, or then you don't get your bonus, right? I know I cringed when a lot of people would bring that up. I'm like, oh man, that's never going to happen. But I did listen to a podcast. I think it's called Afternoon Cyber Tea. It's from Microsoft.
Okay.
And they just talked to the CEO of Women in Cyber. But there was a kind of silver lining or just some hope in the horizon. So this leader was conscious enough to really understand the roadblocks or the gatekeeping that the company was doing. I don't think they mentioned what company this individual was from, but they did mention it was a white male. And then now working with each of the departments, saying, okay, let's take a look at HR. Let's take a look at job descriptions. Do we really need this? And making that conscious effort, both feet in to say, okay, we need to really change, as opposed to, hey, HR, where are our numbers this quarter? Okay, moving on. It's going to require intention, but I'm still optimistic, especially with the younger generation. Younger generation,
They are not playing
right?
around.
They're not playing around. During COVID, we had a school pot. So now kids weren't going to school. We were working full time, and then we had all these kids running around. So the community, the neighborhood, that formed a pot. So 7 kids in the neighborhood. One entire week, all 7 kids would be in one house, and then the parents would have to do it. So I'm like, no. But then my wife was like, hey, you don't see them until like 7 weeks down the road. So I'm like, ooh, okay, yeah, let's do this. But the reason I bring this up, we had a whole smorgasbord of different kids. We had boys, girls, non-binary that changed during that time frame.
Oh,
And the
nice.
kids were quickly to correct me to say, hey, that's not their name anymore. Their name is different. I'm like, whoa, okay, sorry. I'm slow. But they were Jewish, they were non-denominational, Christian, black,
That's
white,
awesome.
everything in between.
That's awesome.
And the kids didn't bat an eye.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you said, the new generation is not going to play around,
Mm.
because at the end of the day, we're one people, right?
Yeah.
Coming in different flavors, different personalities. When we have that diversity, everybody wins. Companies win because more innovation brings more dollars. Trying to continue this conversation in regards to I'm a headline reader. I have to apologize about that. Sometimes I don't click the story, but there was one that DEI programs are getting pushback. What can we do to push back from corporate America that believe that there's no return on investment there?
You want my initial thoughts or the ones that I'm going to put forth? Because I'm trying to learn It's like how you want to say something in an email, you write it out first and you walk away and come back and be like, oh, I probably shouldn't say that. Being in the organization, you continue to have those conversations. And it can't, for me, for it to be beneficial, it has to come from the minority. It can't come from, I will call the non-minorities. It has to come from us to management and on a regular basis. It can't be like a one thing and waiting for something to happen. It has to be something that, you know, your parents, why do I have to pound this into your head? This is why we have to pound it into your head so it sticks. Right. And it can't be something that's just done annually. Hey, it's Juneteenth. What are we doing? Can we do something for Juneteenth? Because there's other people in the organization that want to sell. Are you okay with me doing something? I mean, even if it's just something like that, something small, doing something for a community or starting an organization or starting a small group. And it's not to isolate, and those that want to be part, that want to help push the initiative forward. I think those are small changes that you can make in the organization so management can see that, hopefully. Your other point about, holding those accountable, I think it will take some of the leaders that have been in there for 20 years to kind of hire, because they are the ones that have the hardest time changing their mindset. Ben, why do we have to change? So we have to fighting that battle of trying to change their mind, just kind of wait it out until they decide to take a step back. But people go so far as company shaming. I don't know if that's the way to do it. Boycotting. Those are the two things I was going to say. Oh, you're not going to support me? Then okay, I'm going to make sure nobody else does either. I'm going to make sure that everybody is aware of what your stance is on DEI, that you don't believe in it, that you don't think it's important. There's another way. So many ways to get the attention of the leaders. Right way, it just depends on the individual that wants to try and make that change.
Yeah, I love that, especially boycotts. We as individuals have that power. At the end of the day, we have the money, right? Yeah. We have whether or not we're going to invest on your favorite shoes, clothing item, or whatnot. He talks.
Because I love Chick-fil-A, but I'll eat it if somebody buys it for me, but I'm not going to spend my money at Chick-fil-A. They're like, what difference does that make? I'm like, it may not make any, but they're not getting my money. So tell somebody else why they're not getting my money and they won't do it. So I'm like, hey, if you want to buy me Chick-fil-A, please do, but I'm not spending my money there. They have great lemonade, but I'm not.
I love that, because we don't support Chick-fil-A over here in the house
See?
either. So. But we're going to transition here to more lighter topics and conclude our conversation. Thank you for going deep into these topics that need to be discussed, right? That need to be amplified, because the only way it's going to happen is people talking about it. I'm to the point where I want to make people feel uncomfortable, because we've been feeling uncomfortable our
entire life,
generations.
Yeah.
Right? Generations.
Absolutely.
And if some people feel uncomfortable for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, a day, that's nothing. In lighter perspective, what books are you currently reading right now? It doesn't have to be about cybersecurity or IT that you would recommend, that you're currently reading or just recently read.
I am reading Forgiving What You Can't Forget. I was recently divorced, so I'm trying to continually heal and process and get to the other side of that. I'm much better than I was before, but I'm reading that, and I'm reading Viola Davis's book. Yeah. I haven't finished either one, because one of them requires video, so there's exercises and stuff I have to do. I have to do that too. So I'm doing those. I do one session a week, and then I read a chapter of Viola's book before I go to bed. But that one, and then the one that I would recommend is 8 Signs of Love. It gives you a really good perspective on not just intimate relationships, but relationships, friendships, co-working relationships. It was an amazing book. I listened to it online, but I liked it so much I got it so I could do the exercises in the book.
I got to look at those books, and we'll make sure to include it in the show notes. Lastly, where can people find you and connect with you?
I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Instagram. My Facebook is personal, so you have to know me on a personal level to get that one.
Sounds good. Quintana, this has been an amazing conversation. We can definitely continue over adult beverages, but thank you for your time. I appreciate everything you said.
Danny, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for doing this work, because who knows, if you didn't do it, who would? And I'm glad to be a part of it. So thank you.